Hello everyone, welcome to episode 31 of ZK Live. Tonight we have Napoleon from RGI Spray Booths. We're going to be going deep into all things spray booth. We hired RGI to do the retrofit on the spray booth in my shop. It was a big investment. I was not going to do it until I met Napoleon, which is kind of funny. I had kind of like in the back of my mind, I did kind of I wanted to do it, like it was sort of there, but once I did the spray booth, the original spray booth, the cross draft, I just kind of thought I was sort of stuck and it was kind of out of my mind. I then met Napoleon at the PCA PCA Expo this year. He had a booth, and only because he's friends with my friend now from Fast Rack Equipment, Mike, and they were talking, I was sort of standing there and I ended up sparking up a conversation with Napoleon. I was listening to people and I was kind of giving people my advice on my experience with the spray booth. And somehow it came up, I kind of like dismissed it or something, and it came up that we could retrofit the booth. And that sort of sparked some things in my head, and we started talking, and it was probably 8 months later, we went ahead and upgraded the booth. Hello, sir.
How are you, sir? Good
Doing well.
afternoon.
Oh yeah, we're over in California, so it's a little, what are you, 3 hours ahead of us?
Correct, and 107 degrees to be exact.
Oh man,
It's quite warm.
you guys need one of those pop coolers that we put on my booth.
Yes, most definitely. At the factory, we have about 3 large of those swamp coolers, floor design, just to keep the factory cool.
So let's just dive in. Tell us about you and RGI. I guess I should have known you had a factory, but tell us all about sort of your company and how you got into the business, and I'll let you go.
Well, it really started since I grew into this business. It was family operated business back then. It was so my brothers that were into this business of spray booths or spray booth repairs. What happened is, as things progress, we started outgrowing to different parts of California in itself. I decided to go my way into the Bay Area, San Francisco area. So I've been in this business for about 18 years now. So I got to know the assembly portion of it, the service, the troubleshooting, the manufacturing, engineer support, the ins and outs of what could go wrong and what could go right. But yeah, it's been a long journey, and so far so good.
So you guys manufacture, design, manufacture, install. You guys kind of do the whole process?
Yes. So we noticed that there's a really good niche on delivering a manufacturer booth specified for the customer's needs. We do have a cookie cutter standard booth it's a standard model that pretty much any flavor company out there makes, just to comply with the local codes. But part of our company, we have a division of customized built to suit, as far as spray booths goes, or glass booths, powder coating booths, different industries. And we noticed that was a good niche for us to identify ourselves in the market.
Because I can't tell you how many hundreds of hours of spray booth research I did before I got my first booth, since I got my first booth. And and of course the price tags were shocking when I first started looking at spray booths. And so my first one, and we have a question about this, my first one was a very homemade version of a spray booth. because those price tags were so big. But then when you'd go look right before I was getting ready to buy my first one, I could go online and there was these very attractive pricing on some of these booths. I don't even think there was probably no names to the companies. Some of these, like, they must have been middlemen type of people, but they had these like very cheap prices for booths, and there wasn't a lot of information, and they were I kept going back to them like, okay, this booth is only like $6,000 or $8,000, it says, like, right. And this guy over here, this rep, is telling me $30,000 or $25,000, and I'm like, but I'm lucky. I spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking. I just, more than anything, I wanted to have a human being that I could talk to if things didn't go right. And in hindsight, I'm really glad I did that, even with the GFS booth that I went with, because I still had a person to call and talk to and look at in the face. And but when I did that with GFS, everything was awesome in the sales process, and he was super responsive, and it was just this amazing, tell me the world. It was a very standard sales process. And then once the booth was sold to me, and even the install process, they didn't do the install. They referred me to someone who did. And then they just sort of disappeared. And I had a couple issues, and I didn't get awesome service like I did in the sales process. So I think when talking to you, I was fairly skeptical about spray booths and the buying process. But as I got to know you and learn that you're the guy, like, you own the company, you answer your phone, and you were gonna, like, carry me through this whole process. It made it much easier to think about ever spending more money on spray booths. So can you just give me like an idea of what it's like when someone buys one of those spray booths online for an incredibly low price?
Well, thanks to the internet, when it came up and we were able to advertise pricing and sell through e-commerce online, it became really competitive to sell a booth, meaning you have to be priced right, you have to build a decent booth to put on the market. What we notice with online pricing, it gives us, it gives the buyer the ability to be price conscious, or to say, okay, if this company is giving it to this price, let's say $5,000, and this company is giving it to us for $10,000, there has to be a difference. And primarily the biggest difference is how the booth is designed, how it's engineered so it could be installed or assembled together, all the components and where their components are made, which is very critical. There are a lot of companies out there that manufacture a volume booth, meaning as many as we could sell for this price. And it's the rule of the game is you buy what you paid. So you have to be very careful, especially online, especially while you're buying, because once a booth is in your facility, it's very difficult to make that return, just because it's a large piece of equipment. It's not a small piece that you could take to a retail store. So the items that I highly encourage buyers, because I talk to them all the time, is do your homework as much as you can, research as much as you can as far as how the booth is being constructed, what is it being built out of, what components are included on the booth, what type of motors, fan, what kind of paneling. Very critical questions, and on our websites we have bullet points of those, what to look for. You could always if you could get somebody on the phone, perfect. because they're there to answer the call. But if you can't get nobody on the phone and then it's not a 1-800 number or area code and a phone number, then you're going to have a very difficult time when you have a problem. I get a lot of those calls where customers bought a booth X somewhere else and they're looking for help, even though we didn't manufacture the booth for them. We do assist on helping them out in a way that we can to allow them we could help you assemble it, or we could just guide you through the process. Hopefully down the road, you might consider us for a purchase. So we do that as well. But the big thing to me is you always have to do your homework with spray booths. You always have to make sure that the size that you're buying fits your building. I have a lot of clients that buy booths because they got it such a cheap price. When they receive it, it doesn't even fit in their location. I have that all the time. So they have to modify it, cut it to make it work since they already made that investment. Electrical is a big thing as well. Electrical, you have to always make sure that you got proper voltage. You got 240, 3-phase, 480. You always have to look at that as well.
Yeah, and that's where I think that I was so glad, at least even with the GFS. So my experience with GFS when I did buy my booth was I was new, and this was by far the biggest purchase I'd ever made in my company. And when I got the price, part of it, there was like, I want to say it was like $7,200 to install the booth. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I am super handy. I have all these tools. I love to build things. I was like, man, I got this. Like, I can totally install this booth by myself. No worries. And I was very confident. I was like, I was joking with people. Like, dude, I was going to charge me $7,200 to install this thing. And then delivery day happened.
Right.
And I have, like you just said, you just don't return this stuff. I'd never experienced. They delivered, this tractor trailer showed up, and they were like, make sure you have a forklift ready. So luckily I had a forklift ready. And the truck driver just kind of drove up and was like, hey, and like expected me to do everything. And I, like, from that point, I was like, oh man, this is not normal for me. So the booth was in the very back of the tractor trailer, and I had this like small forklift, and the guy was like, I don't know. So thank God my neighbor was there, and he works on cars, so he grabbed some chain. So we took some chain and we like tied it to the pallets, and we like pulled the pallets off of the thing, and the pallet was absolutely massive. This is not like a pallet at like the grocery store. We're talking like, God, I don't know. It was probably 12, 14 feet long, weighed a ton. And thank God my neighbor was there, and he's a handy guy too. And I'd never driven a forklift, and I'm sitting there like unloading $25,000 worth of equipment. And, you know, it was insane. And we pulled it off halfway. We put some bracing underneath it, and then we drove around with the forklift and took it off. And I got it. It was an act of God. I felt like I'd won, like I was the best, most powerful human being in the world, just getting it off the truck. And then I had it sitting in my shop, and I'm staring at these massive pallets with these, I mean, thousands of pounds worth of metal. And then there's this like book, and it's just like it's like a schematic of a complete booth. And that was it.
Yes.
I instantly called the guy. I'm like, I don't even, this is not IKEA with step-by-step instructions on how to build this thing. There was nothing. And I was not prepared for that at all. And so luckily I was able to call the guy, and he reconnected me with the people who he was going to connect me with originally. And a team of people who install booths on a daily basis came in, 4 of them for 4 days, and built this thing. Wow. And I sit there like, I don't think I would have ever I could have gotten it eventually, but it would have taken me a month and a half. So when I talked to you, you had told me that you had a little bit of a different process. And at least if you send out your stuff, it comes with some instructions on how to build it. Is that correct?
That's correct. So what we end up doing is we do supply owner's manual with a instruction step by step. We do also supply a number to that panel and that booklet for the end user to assemble. We also provide over the phone support or video chat or photo text of where the client is at during the process of assembly. We definitely encourage buyers, if they haven't installed their first booth, and this is the type of booth that you have is complex, I definitely encourage just to pay the fee for them to do the assembly mechanically, because that's the most tedious thing, is the assembly to get it perfectly square so you don't have any air leaks or you don't have any panels that are flimsy. I definitely recommend to go that direction for the assembly. Everything else you could get a local electrician to do. You could get a local roofer or HVAC guy to do. But if you haven't done your first one, then just let them do it. It is a process.
It was unbelievable. When they built my booth originally and my floor wasn't level.
Correct.
I would have been ruined. Like, there's not a chance I would have been prepared for that. I would have built that entire booth on the floor the way it was, and it would have been tilted backwards, and the doors wouldn't have shut, and doors would have opened. It would have been an absolute nightmare. So for anyone out, and that's what I tell everyone now. It's like, when you're gonna buy a booth, just prepare to spend more money and have it done. It's so worth it. It was so worth the install money. And then that leads me to the next piece, which is the retrofit and what we did. And I'm pretty sure if we added up the two booths, what we did with you guys and what I did with GFS, if I had just came to you originally for this style of booth, it would have cost me significantly less money, correct?
That's correct. It's because if you think about it, it's like ordering a custom kitchen area or cabinets, finishing, countertops. If you do that process, but you decided instead of going just with the nice finished top, if you wanted just a marble top, different sinks, different appliances, but didn't decide to go that direction at the time being, it's going to cost you double, just because there has to be a tear down and a modification to install. So it's definitely a lot less if you buy the piece completely already designed for that.
Yeah. And that's where I definitely encourage people now when I talk to them to, and we'll talk in a minute about how you decide what booth to get, but I encourage everyone to change their viewpoint on pricing, because yes, the first time you see a $50,000 estimate for your spray booth, it can be just like mind blowing. And then you can go online and you see some booths for $9,000 and you're like, how? And our brains struggle so hard to justify that difference. But
right.
I can now be, if anyone can learn from me, that's why part of why we're doing this, is like, hopefully somebody can learn from my experience and maybe don't put it in as soon, but put in the right one versus going the route that I went. And I didn't even go online with the cheap guy. If I had gone there, I can't imagine how bad it would have turned out.
Right.
But if someone just is thinking about getting a spray booth, what is the sort of the process when they start to talk to you? Like, what's important?
Well, there's when you're looking for a booth and this is your first purchase, you sublet your painting to a second source, and you're deciding to bring that in-house. Typically, I always ask the buyers what is the larger piece that you're going to spray at any given day. If you specialize on custom cabinets, then your larger piece is going to be 4 feet by 8 feet, being assembled as a pantry. If you spray custom furniture, it all varies. You know, it could be a small picture frame to a large sofa or tabletop. So I always ask the buyers, please give us your larger piece that you're going to spray, and we'll consider the size of the booth that you need. Give you an example. There's booths that are open face that is commonly seen for the wood industry. The open face. People think that the open face 3-wall spraying room is the most industry standard for that type of industry. That spray booth was created for volume, but it does not require a show finish. If your industry requires a show finish, meaning like everybody that's purchasing your products, your cabinets, your finishing, your profession, if they want a show finish, then I would recommend a fully enclosed spray booth like the one you got. If you're gonna do high volume industrial standard finish, then a 3-wall spray booth might suit your what you need. So I typically ask about your type of needs as far as what you're gonna be spraying out of the spray booth and the type of finish that you're gonna require. From there, we'll determine what kind of booth actually suits your purchase.
And so there's cross draft, there's downdraft, there's semi downdraft. Am I missing any?
And well, in the industry in itself, we do have what we call, hopefully you guys can see this.
Only backwards.
Oh, it's backwards? Yeah.
Everything's backwards on IG Live. The ZK is actually backwards.
Oh yeah, I could tell here. Okay, so in the industry in itself, there's 4 different types of flows of air of spray booths. You got your standard cross flow, filter doors, which is the one that you originally purchased. You got your level up, which is the semi downdraft, which is grabbing the air from the top front towards the back of the spray booth. And keep in mind that the overspray has to travel a distance. No matter if you're spraying at 24 feet, 12 feet, or 0, it has to travel that distance. So that's where you're gonna have that show finish, that quality finish. The next step up from the side semi down is the side downdraft, meaning modified downdraft. You have air coming in from the top, drafting away to the bath side walls of the spray booth. That's very popular on automotive, restorations, upholstery, high quality finishes. That type of buyer will buy that type of booth. And now you got your heavy volume production spray booth, which is the downdraft, or they call it true downdraft, which is grabbing air from the top, drafting it down to the exhaust floor basement. You could have a whole roll of filters at the bottom of your existing floor. So in the industry, no matter what flavor company, there's those 4 types of enclosed spray booths. You could be in the semi-truck industry. You could be in the aviation industry. You could be on the custom woodworking and painting industry, automotive. Those are the 4 styles.
And the downdraft, if we were all things being equal in a perfect world, the least amount of dust, like the finest finishes are done in a downdraft booth generally. Is that right?
Generally, yes. But you could build a perfect machine. It all comes down also to the operator and who's going to be the one that's spraying. So you'd be surprised.
The drawback downdraft is, though, you either have to like jackhammer down so that air can go below floor level, or you have like a ramp that goes up into the spray booth so that there's a floor underneath for air to travel, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes. So the jackhammer of doing a pit with the exhaust basement is the ideal scenario. Why? Because then you don't have to deal with the ramps, because we're a foot high off the floor. That allows us to allow for equal air to be pulled out. I recommend, if that's the booth that you're looking for, to do with the existing, to remove the floor and just do the whole recess to the floor as far as the basement goes. Usually people that request raised up spray booths is because the property that they're leasing, they're not able to break concrete. That's the reason why the raised basement was created.
And so that's also why you have the downdraft, the side downdraft then?
That's one thing that on the side downdraft, I call it like our working Chevy or working Ford for the people that have preferences on trucks. It could be abuse, it could take a load. It's a working booth. Less inexpensive for maintenance. You got your standard filters for exhaust, and you still get that quality finish that you're looking for. But you don't have to pay that high ticket item for a heavy, expensive spray booth, which is the difference that you're really paying is the basement, the graded floor, the bigger turbines, because now we're digging with a pit. Those are where those costs come in. So I recommend, if they're looking for a higher show finish, a side downdraft spray booth.
If I were to start from scratch, we probably would have started with the side downdraft.
Yeah, definitely. For the type of products that you do on a daily basis from various colors, and you're trying to do multiple pieces, different colors, I would definitely recommend it, a side downdraft.
Well, that's what we'll do in the next shot. That brings me to another question. Right now I have a semi downdraft. So air comes filtered from above, it comes down, it comes across my booth, and it leaves. Yeah, you live and learn, John. Now the question I have is, what about if I decide to move shops? What does it look like? How often do people move spray booths to a new facility? I would imagine the costs are pretty high. And then I also want to, well, let's start there. What does it look like to move booths? Do you do that often?
We do that probably 1 out of 10. The people request to move their spray booths. And the only people that do request that is people that just actually moved into a facility that they outgrew in a short span. It could be 2 years, 5 years. They decided they needed a bigger place. But typically, what they end up doing is two things. One is they move, but already have the selected equipment that they need at the new facility. And then what they do next is they sell their existing booth to another buyer that needs to have it installed somewhere else. The cost of moving a booth, it's going to be about average of what you paid originally to have it installed, plus the disassembly costs. So it really will justify, should I buy a new one, bigger one, and better one, or should I just invest on relocating the one I have and still deal with the flow? Or so I usually recommend the buyers, if your booth is within a 10-year range and it's in a condition that you could still live with it for the next 20 years because you're moving to another facility, then yes, do the investment of relocating the booth. But if you think you are outgrowing the booth and you think that it's best to actually purchase something that's already established, because you got to consider downtime as well. You're tearing down a piece of machine, one point, and having it installed at another facility. And I think you said that you had it installed in about 4 days or 5 days. So you got to consider that downtime as well.
Yeah. And the resale value of a used spray booth is not very awesome, right?
Correct.
Because of I remember when I was looking at mine, my guy was like, "Yeah, I got a Downdraft one in Long Island. I'll sell it to you for $6,000." And I was like, "Oh yeah, like that's amazing. You were trying to sell me one for $45,000 or something." and he's like, "Well, yeah, you have to move it. It's already disassembled, so you've never even seen it put together. We don't and you have to pay for it to be shipped up here and reinstalled. And so the costs associated with disassembling and reassembling are so high. At a certain point, it just makes sense to get a new one."
Right. And it does. It does. I mean, if I have those inquiries all the time, I get people that call me on the phone and say, "Hey, do you have used equipment? Do you have, instead of buying new?" I typically tell the clients, look at if it's a compressor per se, a compressor, the way that it's built, you put oil, you make sure that it runs correctly, that compressor is going to run 20, 30 years. Truly, the value of a spray booth is when it's installed at a location and ready to operate. That's where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck. Like, for example, if you decide to move, maybe the perfect scenario is to have it left alone and have the next person that's going to move into your facility buy it as is. Because otherwise, yes, the investment that you did originally plus the investment for the retrofit, you're not going to get that in return.
Oh, man. Yeah, I have about $70K wrapped up in this booth, and if I went to sell it tomorrow, I bet you I couldn't get more than 15. Well, no, I have a brand new makeup air unit, but you can't get nearly what you pay for them. So, again, people, you want to be smart about how you're doing this and think about it for the long run. This is not, it is not a car that you can just buy and sell, and it's this quick, easy thing. And I think for guys like me, all of this is I can speak for myself. This was very foreign, all of this stuff. Buying a big piece of equipment like this, I just didn't understand. I didn't get what that meant. In my industry before that, the biggest, I bought a trailer. Well, I can resell my trailer for pretty much what I paid for it. And it's really easy for someone to come pick it up. And, maybe I bought a spray gun and, someone can come pick that up and use it tomorrow, no sweat. But when you look at, $7,000 to $10,000 to break down and reset up the booth, it changes a lot. Never mind running the electrical and like the makeup air unit has gas running to it now. Someone asked, how long will a booth last?
It really comes down to the operator and itself, owners, maintenance. You'll be surprised a spray booth will last you 30 plus years, as long as it's maintained properly, not abused, meaning change out your filters when it's telling you to change. Make sure that you're spraying the product where it needs to be sprayed, not on the walls. It will last you 30 plus years. Even the exhaust motor, propeller, that will last you that range of a time, as long as it's not being, it's like a car. You drive it 10,000 miles without changing the oil, or you drive it 50,000 miles without changing the oil. Something's going to give way. So definitely just keep it clean and change out your filters, and the booth should last you 30 plus years. That's the reason why the spray booths, thanks to the internet, they're so price competitive, because they're not something that they replace the next year or the following. Those booths, once somebody buys them, they're there for a good solid time.
Yeah. Speaking of maintenance, this is a good question for me anyway. What does the maintenance look like on my new retrofit? I'm sure Dan is aware, but what are the types of, like, with my Crossdraft, I changed out filters, and I don't know if I was supposed to do more, but that's all I ever did. Is there more? What does the maintenance look like on a booth like this?
Well, now that we have 2 motors, 2 fan propellers, more electronics, usually the maintenance, it's once a year. Typically, the type of maintenance that you do is you do a visual inspection, make sure that all the electronics are apart, there's in place, nothing is loose, because obviously we're running flow of air, so there's vibration because of the propellers that it's running through. So once a year, I recommend to do a visual inspection and just walk through the booth, see that nothing got jammed over the time, because obviously, since you have your air makeup on top of the spray booth, the only time you need to go up there is when there's a problem. Usually, I always recommend, if you put it on your calendar on a Saturday every year, on November, December, whatever month you prefer, just go up there and visually see yourself that everything is in part. You'll be surprised, a lot of birds go through the inlet. Stuff flies in and gets clogged up, and over time it becomes a worse issue. So I recommend once a year on visual inspection, and then a monthly service, which is changing out your exhaust filters. And you don't need a company like us or a third-party company that specializes on service for spray booths. It really is changing out your exhaust filter and your inlet filter. If you do that, the structure in itself, as far as the caulking or the seals, are not going to give way. It's all going to stay strong. So,
I don't even know, do we have one of those things set up? If we don't, we need to. What is the name of the meter that tells the airflow?
So on this spray booth industry, there's one particular meter that is required by the air pollution control, and it's recognized across the board. That's called a Dwyer Mark II. Dwyer Mark II. Everybody sells that type of meter. It's rarely accessible. You can buy it at Amazon, Granger, pretty much eBay if you want. And that's the type of meter that will tell you the pressure that is inside the booth. There's more fancier meters out there, magnesium gauges, digital gauges, but that's the one that it seems like it's standard recognized for spray booths, easy to read and easy to install. I would recommend that one.
What is it measuring, and how do I read it?
So it's measuring volume of CFM that it's going between the working environment and the exhaust plenum environment. So negative pressure, meaning that it's pulling before the exhaust filter, and positive pressure in the working area. So we're pumping air into a room at a tons of CFM per minute. If there's no negative draw, that room, it's just gonna start, the doors are gonna start popping open. You're gonna start seals cracking. So that meter is reading that positive air to that negative air. Typically, the way that it reads it on a gauge from 0.05 up to 0.25. And as the pressure in the booth is elevating, that pressure will go to 0.10, 0.15, 0.25. At that point, you want to change out your exhaust filters.
Because that's usually going to be your limiting factor, is your exhaust filters get clogged up and it's trying to suck air through a clogged up filter. Meanwhile,
Correct.
tons of fresh air is still being blown in from the air makeup unit.
That's correct.
So people had asked, we didn't really go over this yet, but we went from a cross draft to a semi downdraft by adding an air makeup unit. I mean, I could tell them, you could tell them. What's the difference between that? Like, just so people, and we'll go out in a minute, and I'll show everybody kind of what we're talking about. But we went from passively sucking air out of the booth to now we blow filtered and heated air if we want into the booth, and still suck air out of the booth. So how about, let's talk about the heating part of this whole equation. This is very new to me. Dan knows more about this booth at this point than I do even. How does the heating work? And what are the things I need to look out for?
So heat in itself, it's a big improvement if you're spraying at whatever climate temperature. Meaning if you're spraying a wet finish and you're trying to accelerate the process of the drying, heat will help you equalize that drying process. There's a lot of heat lamps that you're able to buy, or what are those called? Those heat blowers that you're able to buy at your local hardware store. But what we're trying to do is create a temperature environment where if you want that piece to dry at a certain temperature so you don't get any solvent pop or effects with the paint, we're able to do that with the air makeup unit that you have installed. We're able to control the temperature from 100 to 145, and that helps increase the finish of the product, the curing time, because keep in mind, it might be dry at the very top surface where you're touching it and it's kind of tacky, but it's dry to process, but it's still curing between the layers of the stains and the clears that you put on top. With heat, it helps cure all the multi-layers between that base coat and stains or colors that you're trying to apply. So it's a very, very well, per se, it's a good investment just in general to have any type of.
No worries.
Could be a room in itself where it has heat and temperature at 110 degrees, or it could be an actual spray booth like the one you have that you're able to bake a 155 with a timing sequence of 30 minutes or 40 minutes.
So we have not done that yet. I am very excited. We're going to be making some videos where we bake our finishes on. I love the idea of this air makeup unit for a number of reasons. The first one is, in the wintertime, it was miserable. I mean, I'm in New England. We're sucking in literally freezing cold air and trying to heat it up fast before we could get it, before it goes across our paint. And we had a number of paint failures because we couldn't get the air warm enough, fast enough. So the idea that I can not only warm up the air, but I can always pick a air temperature and spray at the same air temperature all the time. For us in the painting industry, trying to control variables is huge. So the idea that I can set a temperature that we spray at and always spray at that no matter how cold it is outside is very attractive to me. Never mind this idea, we've yet to do it. The idea that we can bake our finishes on, I was very excited about that because I think in the sales process, it gives me an advantage when we do a lot of cabinet refinishing. And if I can tell a client that we're going to bake the finish on. Whether or not that makes it a more durable finish is not as important as it is a differentiator. Clients love the fact that we take their cabinet doors off and paint them in our spray booth. I think they love it even more that they get to tell their friends that we bake on the finish. So one piece of this thing was the sales process is now that much easier. We have one more thing that we do different than everybody else, which is always good when you're trying to sell something. My friend here asked, does RGI service all of the United States?
So currently we have dealers in certain states that are helping the clients that are interested in our products. If we don't have a dealer in that location, we will attend to you directly. So yes, we do service the US complete, and we also service the Canada area and the Mexico area.
I knew that only because your unreal team of technicians drove across the country from California to my shop and installed my booth. So speaking of installs, your team of guys came out like special operations and installed this, and it was so impressive. That's something you offer to all clients. If they buy a booth, you guys offer the ability to install it, right?
Yes, we do. We first of all, give a big applause to the team that did the install. They they knew that this transaction was very important. Every transaction is very important, but they going out there was also a trip for them, just because they get to see new areas. But yes, what the whole process in itself, we try to plan out everything to the detail. Where are we going to do photos? What type of product we're going to install? We pre-purchase the items that we need on site, and then we have a plan in mind. So when we get to the location, we're able to do it in a timely manner. So definitely, I think from the day that you ordered to the day that we're there, and the day we started the install to the day that we were complete, you were, pretty up and running in that time frame. I think it was a week.
It was, it was a week max. I think it was less than a week.
Right. I think the guys got there on Monday, and I think they were turning this in on a Friday morning or so.
Yeah, and it was not an easy, it was a retrofit, not building built a booth from scratch. I know it was more difficult. They had to deal with some custom pieces. The well-rounded skill set of your team was very impressive. The way that they were manipulating metal, like they were doing the whole thing. In a way, again, when I watched it, I was like, the thought of me installing this myself is laughable. So anyone who's thinking about installing their own booth, I highly recommend that you don't. Let's see, we have questions. Phil asks a joking question that you might surprise me and have some answer to, but when are you going to have a portable on-site spray booth?
So we do currently make a portable booth. We make a spray booth that it's an exhaust bank. It has lighting, a switch, and it's a plug-and-play item. Curtains that open up like an open-face booth. We have those available, and the reason why we created those was by a request of multiple industries. I'll give you an example, like the automotive industry. They take this portable unit to a dealership, and they refurbish all the bumpers or lot damage of the cars. That was created for them, similar design was created for the people that go on site to refurbish hotels, big condominiums, or even on job sites. So we do make a portable booth that you're able to take with you to a job site and stationary there as a temporary 2-month, 3-month spray booth. And whoever has questions about that, we definitely have it online in our website as far as mobile preps. We call them mobile preps because technically we cannot call it a spray booth because a spray booth has to be anchored and fully installed properly.
I was not expecting that answer. I would ask even the jokes because you never know.
Yes.
Now I have to. My brain is racing, and I'm sure there's a number of people who are thinking the same thing. I'm excited to go look that up.
Yes.
This one kind of gets at that too. What kind of improvements can be done for garage warriors who don't have means for a booth yet? Do you have any? That one might be a stretch.
I think there is more of a basic spray booth design, meaning like that portable unit. You could definitely look or inquire information about that. But again, it's going to take us back to could I have done this? Could I went for the actual booth in itself because of the cost factor or the finish that I'm going to get? We make a lot of those, again, we make those portable booths to go on site, but they have their disadvantages. The type of finish that you're going to get is not going to be as clean as a fully enclosed spray booth. So that's more of a fix to take on site because stuff got damaged along the process.
All right, so we have 1 minute and 50 seconds left. We have our 2-minute warning, and I'm paranoid now because one time we lost it. So I'm going to end this, and we'll start right back up, and we'll continue talking about spray booths. I have some more questions.